Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really focusing in on one of the most, well, anxious parts of the UK economy right
Yeah.
now, the prime London residential property market.
Absolutely. It feels like everything's just hanging on this upcoming UK budget, doesn't it? The one set for November 26th.
Exactly. And the mood,
Yeah.
well, it sounds pretty grim. I saw one industry leader actually described it as a nightmare before Christmas.
Yeah, that quote really resonated. We've based this deep dive on analysis from a Primarisi survey. They spoke to 50 key players.
Right. The brokers, the
The
developers.
yeah, the people right at the coal face.
Right.
And the core finding, it's just overwhelming nervousness. It seems to have completely stalled the market.
It's amazing how quickly that confidence seems to have, evaporated.
It really is.
That quote you mentioned, A Nightmare Before Christmas, it really does nail it. It feels like the uncertainty itself is maybe doing more damage than any specific policy we know about.
That's exactly the point coming through. This waiting,
Yeah.
this not knowing what might actually drop, it's causing these multi-million-pound deals to just, well, pause.
Luxury buyers, sellers just sitting on the sidelines then.
Pretty much trying to guess which tax policies might actually become reality. And there are a few specific threats, even though they're unconfirmed, that are really influencing behavior.
Okay, like what? What are the big fears being floated?
Well, top of the list seems to be a potential mansion tax, maybe on homes over £2 million.
Uh-huh.
Then there's talk about extending capital gains tax, CGT, to include your main home.
Wow, okay.
And also possibly replacing a stamp duty land tax, SDLT, altogether with some kind of new annual property levy.
An annual tax.
Hmm.
But hang on, if the government needs cash, aren't these big, expensive properties kind of the obvious target? Politically speaking, isn't that the low-hanging fruit?
Well, that brings us to why this prime segment is particularly vulnerable. Yes, it relies on confidence, international money.
Right.
But the really critical issue, the one people are highlighting, is that many of these high-end homes are, quote, asset-rich but cash flow light.
Okay, let's unpack that for the listener. Cash flow light. What does that mean in practice?
So think about someone, maybe an older couple, who bought a substantial London house decades ago for, a fraction of its current value.
Okay.
They're sitting on huge paper wealth. That's the asset-rich part. But their day-to-day income might be, say, a fixed pension. Pretty modest, maybe.
Right. Not much liquid cash coming in.
Exactly. So if you suddenly slap on a new high annual property tax or even a broader wealth tax on assets above, say, £10 million, where do they find the cash to pay it each year?
It could force sales, couldn't it? Or cause real financial hardship.
Precisely. It becomes an attack on their lifestyle, their home, not just an investment tax. That's the fear.
Okay, so given that level of, anxiety, what is the industry actually pushing for? What do they want to see happen? Or maybe what do they not want to see?
They desperately want certainty. That's the main message. Certainty over these kind of convoluted, headline-grabbing property taxes.
So less drama, more predictability.
Exactly. We heard quite strongly that many would actually prefer, believe it or not, a modest, clear increase in something like income tax.
Really. Over property taxes.
If it means avoiding chaos in the property market, yes. They see stable, predictable taxes as encouraging investment, even if slightly higher overall.
Okay. And is there a specific property reform they see as maybe the least bad option if the government insists on targeting property?
Yes, the one that comes up most often is updating council tax bans.
Ah, because they're still based on, 1991 values?
You got it. Wildly outdated. It means the most expensive homes are often dramatically undertaxed relative to their current value, while some lower value areas get hit harder.
So updating those bans is seen as more justifiable?
By many in the industry, yes. It feels like a fair, more incremental way to raise revenue from property wealth without, triggering that immediate market shock or capital flight. It feels less punitive.
Right. So let's try and balance this, the industry wish list versus maybe the political reality. What outcomes seem most likely?
Well, based on the sentiment, we can probably expect some kind of property tax rise. Maybe tweaks to SDLT, perhaps those council tax updates we just discussed. Those seem more manageable.
And the really scary scenarios.
The ones that genuinely terrify the market, a broad mansion tax or a major CGT change hitting primary homes, insiders believe those are much riskier for the government.
Risky
Because they think it could seriously undermine London's global standing and trigger quite rapid capital flight. That's the big worry.
So let's bring this back to you, the listener, and maybe the wider economy. Why does this specific market matter so much?
Well, remember, the prime market isn't just about expensive houses. It fuels a lot of activity construction, high-end services, design, legal work, and it attracts significant global investment into the UK.
So if that market stalls or, worse, crashes, the ripples spread out.
Absolutely. The effects could be quite widespread across the economy.
Okay, so the key takeaway here for you.
I think the core insight is that property tax risk is definitely rising. And in this particular luxury end of the market, that feeling of confidence or lack of it might actually matter even more than the specific pounds and pence of the tax cost.
Confidence trumps cost, perhaps.
In many ways, yes.
So the ideal outcome for the market seems clear. A budget that finally delivers some clarity and stability. Which leaves us with a final, maybe provocative thought for you to consider.
Go on.
If the government chooses surprise, potentially punitive measures over that kind of incremental, predictable reform the industry seems to favor. Just how quickly could that global capital decide to leave? And what would that mean for London's reputation as the place to invest?
Hmm. Sobering thought indeed. Something to watch very closely as the budget approaches.
Definitely. That's all we have time for on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.